This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everybody. So we are back again with Jason Sparks, and we were talking on our little break about discussing the topic of grief. And I really, that's kind of what the Holy Spirit put on Jason's heart. And that was definitely a topic that was a part of my life. I probably will always be a part of your life when you have trauma or you have sorrows, that there'll always be a part of you that will, feel that grief of losing someone or something or a situation, or, your life as you knew it. Right. So there's lots of reasons, I think, why people can grieve. And so I'm going to let Jason take it away with his expertise on, what that looks like for people, because it could look different for different people, and maybe some strategies on how to deal with your grief.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Karen. And I think that this is a very important topic because everyone experiences grief, and there's no exception to that. If you're Catholic, you know that from there's the line, we're in this valley of tears. All of us, no matter who we are, at some points in our life will experience grief. And that grief looks different for everyone. And the central feature of grief is that it involves some kind of loss. And that can be an actual loss, but it can also be a perceived loss. It can be a loss that we believe has occurred, even if there's maybe nothing concrete has happened. No one has died. But it can be due to all kinds of things. Maybe leaving a job, leaving the people behind that worked that job. Maybe the status of what that job entailed. The more, I think what most people think of is a death. That could certainly involve, a tremendous amount of grief. Someone that you really cared about, that you loved, that's no longer in your life through death, or even separation, divorce, separation. That person could still be alive and you could be experiencing grief. Your child moves away and into another state, you experience grief. You're at an airport and you're saying goodbye to someone as they're about to get on the plane. You experience grief. I sometimes joke that airports are probably the most common, besides funeral homes, the most common place to see people experiencing grief, because they're saying goodbye. And then goodbye involves some kind of loss. So it's something that all of us experience, and it's unavoidable. And grief affects us on multiple dimensions. It affects us physically, and that it's a very unique experience for those experiencing grief. Some people say they have just a headache they can't shake when they experience grief. Maybe you have digestive issues that you never had before. You have now that you're experiencing grief. It can be dizzy. It can involve dizziness. It can involve a plethora of different physical things. There's also emotional aspects to grief, right? I'll talk a bit about the 5 stages of grief, but one common emotional feature of grief is, of course, sadness, but another one is anger, right? Grief can often involve anger. But it can involve it can be an emotional roller coaster ride, and that is completely normal for someone that is going through grief. So you've got the physical aspect, you have the emotional aspect, you also have the behavioral aspect. Your behavior can change. You can be a very social person and you want to isolate as a result of your grief. Or maybe you don't want to be alone. Maybe every waking moment as you experience that grief, you don't want to be alone, because it brings back all of those feelings that you want to avoid. And so you're with people, and that can be a very normal feature of grief. It can affect your behavior, and it can affect you spiritually, right? Maybe you're wondering, it calls the relationship almost like Job. When Job lost everything, Job was experiencing grief, and his conversation with God changed, right? He started to ask God questions that he never asked God before. And all of that was kind of up front and center for Job as he experienced that. So his prayer life changed as a result of grief. So it affects every dimension of us, physically, spiritually, behaviorally, and emotionally. So I think that maybe something that would be good to bring up right now would be the stages of grief, because it's very common for people to go through stages of grief. Those stages are denial. When we experience grief, when we get the phone call saying that your mother died, your father died, you just were laid off from that job, there's a sense that it's not really real. Did that just happen? Part of us doesn't really believe that it happened. But another part of us knows that we just heard it. And so coming to terms with the reality of that can be a process. Anger, as we talked about, maybe like once reality sets in, maybe we don't want to accept it. Maybe we get angry. It's not uncommon for people who are experiencing grief to ask the question, why me? Right? Why did it have to be my mother? Why did it have to be my father? Why was I the one that was laid off? Right? Why was I the one that had to go through that divorce? Why me? And then we feel that anger come up for us, right? Bargaining. This can happen for people that believe in God, but also for people that believe in other things like karma. You know, like I'm not supporting karma per se, but like the sense of maybe if I do this and this and that I can somehow escape this grief that I'm experiencing, escape the loss that I'm experiencing. Maybe if I make a deal with God, take me instead. Maybe my wife has cancer, right? If I offer this to God, maybe God will spare my wife, right? And the bargaining process is part of the process of grief. There can be the next stage, which is depression. Maybe once you've accepted it, you've gotten through the stage of denial, you've gotten through the stage of anger, you've gotten through the stage of bargaining, reality sets in and you just feel a weight that you're holding right now with coming to terms with the fact that you're about to experience this loss, this divorce, this death, this job loss, whatever it is, this pet that died. You're coming to terms with it and you're feeling that weight, you're feeling that emptiness. There's a piece of you that doesn't feel like it's there anymore. And that's the stage that you're in. You're feeling that, right? And then the final stage is acceptance, right? Integrating the loss into your life. What is it like to experience the new normal? Although I'm careful to say normal because people that experience grief often say there's no returning to a sense of normal. That part of you is always experiencing that sense of loss. But there's a sense of like, there's a place in my heart now for that loss. And to make room for that. Something I want to mention is that those stages of grief are, you go back to each stage. Sometimes you get to the end thinking that you've gotten past it, and then you're back to denial. You're back to anger. You're back to bargaining, right? You're back to depression. It's not linear. It can go right back to square one, and that is normal for someone walking the journey of grief. And so I want to say that all of those stages are completely normal. If you find yourself in those stages and you're experiencing feelings, sensations in your body that you never experienced before that feel so unfamiliar, that can be the journey of grief. You're walking that journey of grief, and it's unique to everyone. It's not the same for everyone. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Do you think when we come back, you could maybe talk about some strategies for working your way through those? Because it's painful and some people don't want to. Who wants to experience pain? But I feel it's important that we do go through those steps.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can talk about
for our own health, and
absolutely,
and anything else that the Holy Spirit puts on your mind. But everybody will be back again with Jason, and I really appreciate that. That was beautiful. All right, everybody, we'll be back. Thank you, Jason.
Sure. All right, we'll see you soon.